Good afternoon and welcome to Sihasin Hour. Today, thank you for joining us, first of all, and excuse me for running a little bit late, but I wanted to host this Sihasin Hour today. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to have a little bit of an election roundup. So first and foremost, I'd like to introduce my guests. Today we have with us the founder and the executive director of the Navajo and Hopi Families COVID-19 Relief Fund, Ethel Branch. And we're always glad to have Ethel with us. We also have Lene Bitsui, who is, I'm going to just call her a Navajo political reporter on social media because she's always investigating and bringing us the facts online through live discussions. And I think that that's awesome. We also have another guest that might be joining us tentatively, and that will be Jennifer Denetdale. If she doesn't join us, that's okay, but she's scheduled to be on. She's a professor and chair of American Studies at the University of New Mexico. My name's Mahayo Manus, and I'm the Public Relations Director with the Navajo and Hopi Families COVID-19 Relief Fund. So I just wanted to just give a little bit of context to our topic today. Today we're going to talk about the 2022 Navajo Nation general election, and that took place on Tuesday, November 8th. So right now we're about a month out from the election. During the election, the Navajo people chose a new president and vice president who are Boo Nygren and Rochelle Montoya. They also elected a new chapter representation. Some things that I feel are interesting are that currently, based on the 2022 general election, 9 out of 24 delegates elected are women, which makes the council composition about 37% women. Only 8 delegates were reelected, which makes about 1/3 of the council returning delegates and about 2/3 new delegates. So, the Navajo people were able to go to the polls and vote for change. And it sounds, based on what we're seeing in terms of the outcome, a lot of our people are wanting new leaders. And I think that that's really based in what they want in terms of how they see the government, the tribe, the political landscape, and they want things to be changed. So we're going to kind of lead off here, and I'm going to let our executive director, Ethel Branch, maybe talk about some of the new leaders who were elected into this in this past general election. So Ethel, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great. Thanks so much, Mahayo. It's awesome to be here with you and with Lene. We're always so excited to have you here with us, Lene, and hear the things you have to say and the way you have to say it as well. It's wonderful. So yet Ethel Branchian Sheh Bimpatwatnina Shle Nakai Bashes Chin Sitna Jenny Dashache Ado Nakai Dashanella. And I'm happy to be here with all of you. My background suggests I'm in Kinthana, but actually I'm in Crown Point. So, but good to be here with all of you virtually. And so the first thing I'm going to do is just kind of run through the election results, the official election results. So let me see if I could share my screen. There we go. Great. So one thing that really struck me, other than the incredible number of women who got elected, almost every woman who ran for council was elected. But also, when I looked at the comparison of who got elected, I was like, wow, this is a strong statement by the Navajo voters that they want change. They want women leaders, they want young leaders as well. So we'll just run through the data here. And as many of you know, we have a council composed of 24 delegates. So starting with the Chinle chapter results, and some of these are pretty close races. And I'll comment on that a little bit as well. As many of you know, I was a candidate in the presidential primary and helped lead an effort to do a recount and to have a revote, actually, because there were so many discrepancies in the primary election. And so when I see these close numbers, it's a little concerning, but
Definitely.
anyway, I won't discuss that at length. Maybe at some point in our conversation, I'll talk about that a little bit more. But
Sure.
here with Chinle chapter, we have Dr. Leland Leonard, and Shauna Ann Claw, and a woman prevailing, of course. And Shauna is also a young woman. She's the former, well, I guess she's still the chapter vice president in Chinle, but will be being, I don't know what do they call it? Sworn in as a council delegate, I guess is the terminology, in January. So that's one for the young or women candidate. And then we have, just going down on the left side, Jermaine Simonson, a wonderful woman entrepreneur. She runs Rocky Ridge Store, has just been really tenacious at making, forging a living really on our homeland as an entrepreneur. She's a very inspiring young woman. I don't know, I'm in my 40s now, so 40 is the new 30 or whatever for me. So I think she's young. I don't really know if she is, but she's not old. I know that. So, and we have her, being very successful in her campaign. So that's another win for a woman or younger candidate. And then we have the Dilcon, Greasewood Springs, Indian Wells, Teastone, White Cone chapter results. Lee Jack Sr., he's a longtime delegate. As Attorney General, I enjoyed working with Mr. Lee Jack Sr. But there we had Sherilyn Yazzie prevail. Sherilyn is also another wonderful, just inspirational woman leader. And she also is an entrepreneur, forging a living off of the land as a farmer, actually. She runs Coffee Pot Farms. And so I encourage all of you to look at her website and see what kind of inventory she has. During the summer, they sell food boxes. There's a more fancy term for that. Anyway, and she does go to like the Flagstaff farmers markets regularly. And I think some other regional farmers markets. So you can find her there. And I can personally attest that she has incredible kale chips, the best kale chips I've ever eaten. But so Sherilyn, she did very well, she prevailed there as well. So that's, three in favor of the women or younger candidate, 0 in favor of, essentially the old guard, right? And then up next, we have Vince James beating out Richie Nez. Vince is just, he's a wonderful, I think he's one of the, he's a model of being a good delegate. He's so connected with the grassroots. He was so instrumental at providing COVID relief to his community during the pandemic. We worked closely with Vince. He was always very supportive. So not surprising that he won by a landslide there to be reelected. And Vince is actually, I don't think he was ever a delegate before the last term. Mahio, I don't know if you remember, or Lene, if you guys know, and he's a younger gentleman. I think he's a younger gentleman. Navajo men are so hard to pinpoint in terms of their ages.
I know he was. I know he served in the last council. Before that, I'm not sure. I'd have to look it up. But yeah, he is definitely
there now. But he wasn't in it previous to in the 23rd Navajo Nation Council. But he is in the 24th. So I'm going to count Vince as a younger candidate as well. So that's 4-0 so far. And then we have for Bahastla, Coyote Canyon, Mexican Springs, Nas Chitty, and Tohatchee. We have Nathan Nota and Olin Kayumia. I don't actually know much about Nathan, but he won by a slim margin. Do you guys know anything about Nathan? I know Olin is a relatively younger candidate.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering too about Mr. Nathan. I didn't know his background, and I was hoping that I could get informed on what his political career has been like too.
Okay, so I'm just going to put him under question mark.
Well, this is Jennifer, and pretty much anybody who's elected from my district, which I think is District 14, they're all related to me, so it's always all good.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us,
So,
Jennifer. Appreciate it.
yes, Dr. Denetdale, would you say Nathan is a younger candidate?
I think, yes, he's related to me. He's maybe in his 40s, I think,
Okay.
and I think
Yeah.
he's a first time candidate for any Navajo political office. I know he's had a long time job in something that deals with agriculture, if I remember correctly. I had during the election time, I didn't have a chance to talk to him.
Awesome. Okay, well then I'm going to count him. Like I said, I'm in my 40s. That's the new
He's
30
probably-
to me. I consider that young.
He's young. Yeah, he's young.
Great. And then the next chapter or region is Klagato. I can't say this. Hauk, Nhatatsil, Sasa'ane, and Wide Runes. Arvin Mitchell is like a fixture in Navajo Nation government and has been for decades now, I think. Arvin was working in government way back when I was in law school. So since 2005, at least, has had a very prominent role in government at Navajo Nation. So I would consider him old guard. Lamardo, I don't really know who Lamardo is. Does anybody have any intel on Lamardo? But I would, to me, that's a rejection of the old guard. Someone new. Do you guys know anything about Lamardo?
I don't know.
No, I don't.
Okay, so that's, this is on number 6 that we've been working on, and they are all, new. They're young, or they're women, or they're just new.
Aseret was the director of general services in this last administration. He was the ED for general services with the Nez administration. So
Interesting. Okay, so we're not sure what we would call him, but for the next position for Crystal, Fort Defiance, Red Lake, and Sawmill, we have Wilson Stewart, who is the sitting delegate, and Andy Nez. So we have Andy prevailing there. And I don't know anything about Andy's age, or but that's getting out the old and in with the new. Didn't you guys have intel on Andy?
I saw Andy at the Christmas Bazaar, Arts and Crafts Bazaar at the museum last week, and I congratulated him. I think it was just really wonderful that Andy was elected. He's young. He is I think he was working with Department of Navajo Education.
Oh,
And he is a doctor too. He's Dr. Andy
Yes.
Nez, I believe,
Yes.
because I have him
Oh,
on my
wow.
Yeah.
Awesome.
so highly educated. That's great. We definitely need more of that in our council. And that's something that, at some point I'd love to talk about that. For state legislatures and federal elected positions like Congress or the Senate, most of those people are lawyers, they're law trained. And that's one thing that is missing from our council is, folks that are law trained or have some professional background of that sense. And so, I would love to see a really rigorous training program for the new council delegates. But we can talk about that later. We have the Twinani's Zizi chapter, Angie Williams. Angie did not prevail. Otto So was reelected. And so that's one instance where, the old guard, or, there was no rejection of the old and bringing in of the new. So that little aberration there. I'm just going to make sure my count is not off. So I have 7 at this point that's, new. young, educated woman candidates, one of the above, and then one that is retaining someone who has already served in the Navajo Nation government or recently served. So on this page here, we have Coppermine, Kaibato, Lachi, Tonalea, and Botaway Gap. We have Helena Nez Begay prevailing there against Paul Begay. So another one on that side. And then for Sabakin and Natsisan, Shanto, and Old Jato chapters, you have Hank Stevens running against Herman Daniels. So they retained Herman Daniels, although Hank is also not exactly a newcomer to Navajo Nation politics. I think he's the chapter president out there right now. So at Navajo Mountain. And then we have my chapter, my delegate position, City Toy, Loop, Talani Lake, Cameron, Coal Mine Canyon, Thomas Walker versus Casey Allen Johnson, and Casey prevailed. So Casey is a young candidate. And then Thomas Walker has been House delegate from that region for.
Ethel, can I ask you, do you have any intel on the new delegate for your area?
Yeah, not a whole lot. You know, I interacted with him a little bit during the campaign. I don't know him personally. He's from Cameron, or at least lives in Cameron, some close connection to Cameron. But you know, he seems, I don't know, when I spoke with him, it was a breath of fresh air.
Oh, that's
so
good.
I'm excited about his election. Yeah, so the next region is Chilchimbatoy, Denetdale, and Kayenta. We have Nathaniel Brown, who I would consider a pretty progressive candidate, and Shondine Parrish, and so, you know, Shondine prevailed there. So we had a woman candidate prevailing there. The next one is Shiprock. Shiprock, one of the rare chapters where they re-elected the candidate, but she's a woman, Eugenia Charles Newton, and of course her opponent was former President Russell Begay. And that was, I mean, you know, she got 2/3 of the vote essentially. So quite a strong endorsement of retaining the woman candidate. And then we have Mexican Water, Tuatacan, Tisnas Paz, Anib, and Red Mesa. That was Davis Filfred versus Curtis Yanito. I don't know a lot about Curtis, but Davis was a member of the 23rd Navajo Nation Council. So I worked with him a lot when I was Attorney General. He is a staffer for the Nez administration. So definitely entrenched in Navajo politics. And so to me, this is, you know, voting out the old guard, bringing in someone new. But do you guys know much about Curtis? I feel like I have a vague recollection that he may actually be a former delegate.
I think he worked at the chapter level as well. I had him on, and I know that he's, I think he works at the chapter level, and he applied and he won. So yeah.
Great. Okay. Cool. Thanks for that little bit of intel. And then the next region is toward Lene, Red Valley, say Anatsizi, or I can't say that one. Tuahaltsoy, Beklabato, Gadiahi, and Cove chapters. Another woman candidate getting 2/3 of the votes and keeping her in her seat, Delegate Amber Knazba Krati. And then we have Vicente, Lake Valley, Nahodishkish, Sa'i Ahi, White Rock, Crown Point, Huerfano, Naizi. And that was just voting out the existing delegate and bringing in a new one. But I think Danny Simpson has a lot. It's not exactly voting out the old guard. He has quite a bit of experience as a delegate.
Wasn't Danny Simpson the delegate before Mark Freeland? And so it went from Simpson to Freeland and then back to Simpson, I believe.
I think it was Jonathan Perry.
Yeah, Jonathan.
Oh,
Perrier,
oh, oh, yeah, you're
Yeah.
correct. That's right.
Navajo Nation
Sorry
Council,
about
yeah. But Danny served previously. So, but I'm just gonna count that on like voting out the old, bringing in the new. And so that's 16 that we've gone through so far, and the tally is 12-4. Although 2 of the ones that they've kept are women candidates, right? So I guess I'll fix that and move those 2 over to the new women or well-educated, I guess. I don't know. And that would be Asseret, I think we said. And then so to wrap things up, we have Seth wasn't running against anyone. So I'm just gonna, that should get like 5 points in terms of retaining. From Bahala, Chichelta, Manuelito, Sethichi, Rock Springs, and Sayato chapters. And then for Church Rock, Yambatoa, Mariana Lake, Pinedale, Smith Lake, and Theroux, we had Stephen Arviso beating out Edmund Yazzie, and Edmund was part of the 23rd and 24th Navajo Nation Council. I'm not sure about previous to that, but so that's, you know, bringing in someone relatively new, at least in recent years. Do you guys know anything about Stephen Arviso?
No.
No.
Okay. And then we have Tohajale, Alamo, and Rama chapters, Jamie Henyo and Norman Begay. Norman was part of the 23rd Navajo Nation Council, but so going back to Norman and voting out the existing guys, I'm going to put that under new. For Low Mountain Mini Farms, Nazlini, Touchy, Blue Gap, and Solani Cottonwood chapters, we had Crystal and Curly. This one is so close.
Yeah.
9 votes. She beat out Key Allen Begay Jr., who is a longtime delegate. He was part of the 23rd and 24th Navajo Nation Councils, and I'm pretty sure he served previous to that as well. But that was, as my mom says, one of the queens who won. One of the former Miss Navajos. And then for Rock Point, Lukachukai, Round Rock, Saley, Wheatfields, and Setchiji chapters, we had Council Delegate Slater, who I would also consider to be a progressive candidate, being retained. So I'll just go ahead and put him with the, you know, keeping the old. And that was an instance where a woman ran but didn't prevail. But it was, you know, it's pretty close.
Yeah, 45 votes. That's close.
Very close. Yeah. So definitely expressing a lot of will by the electorate there for something new for woman leadership. So now I have the tally at, let's see, 17 to 7. That works out, right? That comes out to 24. So yeah, a lot of movement and flux in Navajo Nation politics right now. I know I am personally very excited to see so many women being elected. 9 delegates, as Mahayo said. That's, you know, that's quite a bit. What does the percentage work out to? I had that previously. It's at least a third.
Yeah, it looks like the council now is about 37%. So it's just over 30% with 9 delegates and 9 delegates being women, which is great.
So I've spoken a lot, and I think I want to give Lene and Dr. Denetdale some time. Mahayo, do you want to
Sure.
hand things off?
Yeah, you know, and thanks for running through the tally of the newly elected chapter delegate, chapter representation. And then, you know, also just as everybody knows, our new president elect is Boo Nygren, and his VP is Rochelle Montoya. So it's the first time in Navajo Nation history that we have a vice president who's going to be who is a woman. and that's awesome as well too. So just in terms of kind of reflecting on this last general election, I'll go ahead and start with Lene. But Lene, what are some of the implications that you're getting from this? What do you feel about the current political landscape of the Navajo Nation in terms of, our voters and our elected leaders?
Yeah, I want to introduce myself first real quick. She Lene Bitsui and she Kitlachi ni and Schlit so ni Bashish Chin, Twitch ni Dashache, Kani Dashanak and Stanshla, Mle Twidanesh, do Batatic and do Alcap do Ditlebe Nasha. Thank you for inviting me, Mahayo, Ethel, and Dr. Jennifer. I really appreciate being on here. It's an honor. I love your show. It's everything. I think that you guys are doing a fantastic job.
Thank you.
And really getting notable interviewees on to really educate and bring awareness to our people. So thank you, Mahayo. So
Appreciate it.
as far as the political environment, and this is my first time in my life where I followed from beginning to end. And I think that having the people vote in a new administration says a lot about the hurts and the wrongs and the unheard voices of our people. I think that with this new administration coming in, there's a lot of cautious hope and cautious faith that things will turn around for our people. And I think what happened was with the fact that all the not just the broken promises, but I think it was the wasteful spending that really kind of did it for a lot of our people, according to the demographic that I've been sharing on my feeds, and just people just being fed up, like up to here. And I really feel like voices have been unheard. And even now we have half of council that's going to be traveling to Clark County. They're going to be traveling to Washington, New York, and Colorado. And I'm like, what's the point? You guys half of you aren't coming back. Why are you traveling? How does this benefit us as Navajos, as Dene? And when we have people, it was just this morning, I was listening to Hesse and Delegate Slater. They heard a report from the Page Unified School District, a school board. And it's known that Page is unfriendly to the Navajo population. And not only that, they said that they've been trying to seek funding so the kids can go to Washington to learn, or just to various places, and they were denied, and they had to kind of fundraise on their own. So with all these things happening, it just seems like there's just so much neglect. And it was really heartfelt to listen to the presenter this morning, as a matter of fact. And I'm hoping that this new administration, the new delegates that have come in, I lost my delegate in Kayenta. But hey, we got to move forward. But I have a lot of hope, and I have a lot of hope for especially our elders and our veterans who have been waiting for 20, 30, 40, 50 years for the promises that have been made and to go unheard, and they feel used. They feel like, what's the point? And with this new administration, with Dr. Boo and also with Rochelle Montoya, I'm hoping that they actually listen to the people. I'm hoping that they actually incorporate change, implement change. And I think that them advertising for the 15 positions for division directors is it's a good step in the right direction. I think that we have so much untapped talented within our people, because we are 400,000 strong. I think that to tap into everybody that we don't know of is sending a strong message of, hey, we're reaching out to you, instead of me playing favorites and saying, I want him, I want her, can you do this? And I think that's definitely a way to go before they even get inaugurated. So, but yeah, I feel like there's a lot of hesitant hope right now, and I'm hoping that Dr. Boo follows through.
Awesome. Dr. Denetdale, kind of the same question, like how do you feel about the current political landscape of the Navajo Nation, just based on this general election, based on the new elected leaders, and maybe just contrasting, the previous administrations to where we are now in terms of how it influences your perspective?
Well, thank you very much, Mahio and Ethel and Lene. I hadn't met you before, Lene. I know I was supposed to be on one of your shows, but it just didn't happen. So it's good to see you all. And it actually was about the repeal, the Gay Marriage Act, that you were having a discussion, which is one legislation that I've been following. I'm Jennifer Denetdale. I'm and I'm originally from Tohatchee. I vote every single election at Tohatchee. To the best that I can, I follow elections, and I follow, what our leaders are doing. I'm also the chair of the Navajo Nation Human Rights Commission. And so yesterday I was in Window Rock, just had a really wonderful time listening to the Honorable Steve Darden about one of our Human Rights Commission projects about returning our people and reclaiming our knowledge about life and death and attention to death, stories of death and grief and life. And so it was just wonderful. There was like over 50 people and most of them were elders. And I heard them as Vice Chair Darden was sharing his research. And I could just hear murmurs of approval. And then the first person to share, it was very emotional. And so I'm always interested at the community level of what our people are doing, initiatives, the efforts on the ground to get, first of all, attention to crucial issues, and then the ways in which our leaders take this up when there's so much community support for it. So I kind of come from that position. I'm a historian by training. And so when Mahio asked me to be on this, I was like, I don't know anything. I'm not a politician or a leader. And then I heard some really derogatory racist remarks regarding our new president-elect. And then I heard gender discrimination. Women should not be leaders. I'm like, okay, I think I know something. So in terms of the political landscape, I think what I hear is the same as what Lene is saying. Is it Lena or Lena? Am I saying it correctly, Lena? I don't want to mispronounce.
Yeah, it's Lene. It's Lene. Thank you.
That there is a sense of hope and optimism. And, I was really interested to think about the demographics. And I don't know if this is true or not, that some people are saying that it was the younger Dene who elected Boo, and it was the women, but I don't know who keeps track of those demographics. I would like to know if that's true, actually. I did an interview with journalist Arlissa Vicente, and she asked me what I thought about the gender dynamics. And I said, like both Ethel and Lena are saying, is that there's an optimism, there's a sense of, if we have women in these top leadership positions, we have expectations, and then the next part is exactly what are those expectations and how is this based on what we associate, the leadership qualities that we associate with women. And so I'm curious, and I'm following this just to think about what that means.
Awesome. Thanks, Dr. Denetdale. Always a pleasure to have you on. And at first, when I had reached out, that was exactly what she said. She said, I don't know if anybody would want to hear what I have to say, but I think that we're always interested in your perspective, because it's very refined in terms of including the historical context of leadership. And I think that's awesome. Ethel, I want to just go ahead and ask same question, based on our current the outcome of our election, what are some of the things that you're synthesizing and just and recognizing in terms of the political landscape of the Navajo Nation currently, in terms of these results?
Well, have it post primary, I kind of had like I feel like there was, at least in the presidential primary, a very strong rejection of women leadership. You know, I got about 10% of the vote. And then all the women candidates combined got about 11% of the vote. And so I was like, okay, that's a pretty strong message that no woman should ever run for Navajo Nation president ever again. And it doesn't matter who you are or how qualified you are. There is just no interest at all. So I was pleasantly surprised to see so many women make it through the primaries on the council side. And then, of course, once I saw the victories, I mean, it was just like election result night. You know, it was like, holy cow, women are sweeping this race, and young people are sweeping this race. And so it was just like really exciting, and you know, it's like, wow, we're going to have a new day in Navajo politics, in Navajo governance, with all of this new women leadership and young leadership, you know, like really just clearing out a lot of the old guard. And so I'm really excited for what's going to come. I feel like a lot of the people I know who are coming in, you know, they're really focused on results. And like, I'm talking about, you know, like what's on the dinner table for Masana and Che, you know, like, are they going to have dinner tonight? Like, these people care about those things that really matter in the day-to-day lives of our people. And I think that's really what should be driving Navajo governance is, you know, compassion for our people. The people, the Navajo people who live on Navajo Nation have the highest need for resources. You know, they're not able to move off reservation and get a job off reservation. That's a lot of our elders. That's a lot of children. And we, you know, our nation operates just like any other developing nation in this world. You know, they send the people who can work and access education to America, and those people work there and generate income and send that money home to support their families, and they leave behind their children and their elders. And that's exactly what we have at Navajo Nation as well. So our government needs to be very focused on service delivery and making sure that our most vulnerable are taken care of. And so I feel like, you know, like that's the primary function of Navajo Nation government, making sure that our people have running water, electric, like very basic things, paved roads, so that there's equity and there's less hardship for our Navajo people who live within our nation. So I think that, I mean, I'm hopeful that that's what we're going to see is that steadfast focus on, like, who cares about buying an off-reservation ranch? Like, let's care about feeding our people, and let's make sure that they have shelter, and that their lives are better, instead of, you know, traveling to Colorado or wherever it is that they want to go to do these junkets. You know, like the trip to New York, I'm not aware of that. That's probably the investment committee, you know, like, really, do they have to do that? Really, they can't talk to their investment managers through Zoom like everybody else. So I feel like a lot of the new elected leaders, at least on the council, that I know, are really focused on that. And then, of course, you know, I endorsed Boo Nyron as president. And I think he also has that concern. You know, he has those hard scrabble beginnings, and I think has a lot of compassion for the people, and that's why I supported him. And so I'm really looking for all of those new leaders to focus on those issues that really matter for real Navajo people, you know, for our people who are here on the nation and really need that attention. And I also just wanted to note that I went back through my numbers and I messed them up. I'm like, math is not my forte. That's why I'm a lawyer. But so 14 of the folks are, like, you know, new young women. And then 2 of them are re-electing women. So really 16 of, you know, what I would call rejectional guard. And then 5 retained who were not women. And then, of course, we have 3 that were contested. We have the race on Eastern Navajo for Delegate So's former seat. That's being challenged. The results are being challenged by Leonard Sosi, who is a longtime fixture of Navajo Nation government, and in fact was an advisor to President Nez. And so, even though he didn't get elected for that seat, against Daniel So, he was still very much a part of what has been happening the last 4 years. And then there's Richie Nez's seat, which used to be the speaker's seat under Lorenzo Bates for the 23rd Navajo Nation Council. And that is being challenged by another Nez staffer, which is interesting. And then there's a third seat. I don't remember which. Do you guys know what? It's not coming to mind. I know it. I can look it up. I'll look it up here. So next time I speak, I can refer to it. But that was also someone who is working either for Nez or has worked closely with him. So it's kind of interesting to see that, especially since, during the recount process, the Nez administration was not supportive of that and kind of poo-pooed that. And of course, the Nez himself wanted a recount, although he wouldn't quite swallow his pride and say it outright. But anyway, so really, really interesting results. I think that, I don't know, I'm definitely excited, and I have hope, and I'm excited to see, Boo Nyron, I don't know, President-elect Nyron just closed his application period Monday evening for his new division director. So I'm excited and hopeful. Can't wait to hear who those folks are going to be. And hopefully it's again some well-trained folks, but who come to their work with a lot of compassion for the people. But yeah, I'm excited for the next 4 years. I would have been pretty sad if we weren't going to have if it was just like business as usual, because we live in a really pivotal moment right now, and we need leadership that cares about protecting our people and keeping them on Navajo Nation. And when I campaigned, I was constantly saying our people could become climate change refugees in the next 5 to 10 years. This is real. It is happening. And our people, the housing condition on Navajo Nation is so bad. These are not weatherproof homes. Many of them don't have electricity and running water. Without those things, people will not be able to live in those homes for the next 5 years, given the substantial. I mean, at this point, I'm starting to use the term climate chaos. It's not just climate change. It's just, we don't know what it is, but whatever it is, it's intense. And you need to have a weatherproof home and water and electricity to withstand that. So I'm hopeful that, there's
Awesome,
going to
awesome.
be focus on that.
Cool. Lene, I saw you raising your hand. Lene, did you wanted to say something?
I have a question for Ethel. Ethel, did you apply for any of the positions, or have you been asked to be a part of the cabinet or administration for Dr. Boo?
I would like to raise my Fifth Amendment right.
Enough said.
Right.
That makes me happy.
Mhm.
Okay. That was all.
We've kind of talked about some things. We started a little bit late, but and some of you ladies touched on this, but I wanted to ask again, as we come into these administrations, we always have a renewed sense of hope. It happens every 4 years. Having worked within the department outside of the presidential administration, we have a lot of staff and staffers who are like, it doesn't really matter if we see change, because there's always going to be another division director that comes in every 4 years. You have that last year of the administration where people just kind of, sit back because they're like, well, we're going to have a new leader. We're going to have a new division director here. And, just at the end of the administration. So how can we really, what is the quantifiable change that we can see that we want within these administrations? You only have 4 years once you get in, and it takes that much time to get things set up. what are the things that you guys would like to see addressed? And I'm going to go ahead and let Dr. Denetdale go first on this.
Okay, so the last couple of weeks, I'm at the end of my semester here, and I teach one class a semester because I'm a professor and chair of my department. So I teach one class a semester, and this semester I taught a grad seminar. And so I'm at the end here, I'm grading papers. And I've been going home to Tohatchee. My mom and dad passed away. My mom passed away right before COVID. And so we're dealing with, for my mom's house, which was built late 1960s was when my dad started it. And my mom was one of those elders who didn't talk about death, didn't want to talk about it. And so we're like many Navajo people are left in a quandary. And so I'm going back and forth home to Tohatchee. Sunday morning, I felt like I really needed a latte. Can I go to Tohatchee and get a latte? No, I cannot. Can I sit in a coffee house and just do my work in Tohatchee? No, I cannot. I went to Gallup, at least 20, 25 miles away,
Yep.
just so I could sit and have a latte and work for a couple of hours on my computer. In November, I think it was, or October, I was taken with these two little girls in my community. They're my relatives, and I've been buying shoes for them because it takes care of my own love of shoes, because I don't buy shoes for myself anymore. So I'm buying them shoes. I'm having to go across ruts and dirt. This is like 1.5 miles off the highway. And I'm stopping at a rut and deciding, am I going to go through there? Will I get stuck? So like Ethel was saying, the most obvious, most basic things of life are dependence on border towns for absolutely everything.
Exactly.
Why are these conditions continue to be tolerable for our people? When I was in Gallup last week, almost every single place there were Navajo people working in the stores and the businesses. Yep. And I can bet you anything that all of them work on wages where they don't have benefits, they don't have health care. They keep their wages, their hours below 40 hours so that they don't have to pay them for their labor. These are the most pressing things, along with water. And I get sad every time I see that water line coming through my community, from the San Juan region. My dad was from Batilid, from the Nahanzad, and right by the river, there's the transfer station that they created where they begin to bring the water south. And my dad said, that's where my home was. That's where I grew up. There's no Hogan there anymore, and so these are just like, and then you see the pipeline going to Winter Rock. That was part of, regular Navajo people don't have access to what happens in the negotiations for our water. We don't know. And so these are, of course, we already know this, that these are some of the most pressing issues, and yet we can't address them. And then we have our community people addressing climate change by a lot of them's resistance to continuing extractive development. So these are some of the issues that I pay attention to.
Awesome. And just really quick, I think that those are great points. We have so many Navajos that work in the border towns because that's where the employment opportunities are. And then by the same token, we have people who live and work on the Navajo Nation, but live off the res because there's no housing. So we have to go to places like Gallup, Farmington. I mean, it's not strange or, abnormal for people to live like in Farmington and then travel all the way into the res to do their jobs every day. I mean, we need housing. We need the infrastructure that supports housing within our communities. So, and just that little, anecdote about wanting to go get a latte. I mean, why can't we have Starbucks? Why can't we have better broadband so that we can go somewhere and we can just work? I mean, do we have to always resort to going off res just for simple things like that. And real quick plug, go to Skoden Coffee in Window Rock. They do have broadband and they have coffee there. But Lene, I'm going to go ahead and let you answer that same question as well.
Oh yeah, and I'm sorry to hear about your parents, Dr. Jennifer. That's really heartbreaking, and many prayers and blessings to you and your whole family for your losses. So just so sorry about that. It's heartbreaking to hear it, and no matter who. And last count that I saw on the COVID outbreak was 1956, and that was 2 weeks ago. I'm sure that 1,956 number went up. So again, I just want to say quickly for our people to continue to wear their masks and do their due diligence and making sure that everybody stays safe and to sanitize. So as far as changes, any major changes that need to be made on my part, just because I'm more of a listener and I'm more of a voter, enrolled member of the Navajo tribe. I have nothing to do with the political environment. I do not work for the tribe. Never have I worked for the tribe. Maybe,
Sure.
yeah, never worked for the tribe. But I think what I want to say is that I would love and advocate for our people to get involved. Right now, we are getting involved. And I hope that those who are appointed, who are political elected leaders, know that the people are now watching. When I used to listen to town halls from Jonathan Nez, and also, I still do, and I listen to council, there used to be tops 8 people that were watching and listening. And that was on a good day. I was like, man, there's a lot of people. One day there was 12 people that were tuning in. I thought, man, we're breaking all kinds of records. People are getting involved. But now today there's an average of over 100 people who watch on all platforms. And so for me, I feel like that's really bringing attention to the leaders, elected leaders, and those who are division directors, that we're watching. We're not sitting idly by, bowing our heads, no longer being involved. We are getting involved because we are the voices for those that have become voiceless, who have been intimidated. And I think that it's our responsibility to hold everybody accountable. And I hope that our people around the world will sit up straighter, pay attention, and to know who their delegate is, to know who their chapter president is. Because, I mean, and I hope that the new division director for DED, I think they kind of oversee chapter houses, really enrolls or implement some sort of customer service program, because not all chapters are friendly even to their own communities, and that's heartbreaking. And even with Navajo and Hopi, with your group, Ethel, I know that sometimes some chapters wouldn't let you distribute at the chapter house. So I think that there has to be more community involvement to say, this is our chapter, this is our government. We demand to know what's going on. We want receipts of your trip to New York, to Washington, to Colorado, and to Clark County. We want to know why you're going over there, first of all, and how does it benefit us, the Navajo tribe. And I would love for our leaders, elected leaders, to know that there are more Navajos living off the reservation than on. And why? No housing. Home site leases are years in the process. You have to wait years to get a home site lease. And I think that streamlining a lot of these processes and getting out of the carbon copy age is really important.
Yep.
And I think the number one thing, and I hope that Dr. Boo and Rochelle Montoya do this, is once they're inaugurated into office and they take their oaths, is that they open up government. I think that our people are hurting right now, and the doors that are closed, the people who are not able to help, and especially with hardship. I think it's really hard for our people to get their services when everything is still on lockdown. And I hope and pray that the new administration says no more. We got to uplift these things because COVID isn't going anywhere. It's up to us to be responsible, to wear our masks and to sanitize and to make sure that we're keeping some sort of which I find ridiculous because I went to all the fairs on the Navajo Nation and no one was wearing their masks. Nobody was 6 feet apart, and yet we're still in lockdown. So I think that's a huge contradiction in itself. So I really hope and pray our people continue to be involved, to get involved, ask questions, and know who your delegate is, know who your division director is, know who your attorney general is, your controller, your president, your chapter president. And I think it's up to us to really know, like, I'm at the point where hardship is closing this month in a couple of weeks. I'm at the point of telling our people around the world, if you haven't gotten a response, CC the president, vice president, all the delegates and your chapter officials. Say, hey, I need to know the status. I'm still waiting. It's been 5, 6, 7 months.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it shouldn't go to that extreme, but I am encouraging my followers, my family through go CC everybody. Let them all see that, and every day until you get a response from the controller's office, because our people are dying. Our people need funds to bury their loved ones. Our people need funds to pay their utilities. Our people need funds to pay their rent, mortgage, school, tuition, books. And I think it's unfair to keep the nation on lockdown. And I hope that we hold them all accountable because now we're listening, we're being involved. Thank you, Mahaya.
Awesome. Thanks, Lene. I'm going to go ahead and let Ethel answer that question. And I know you guys had made time to be here today. If you have to jump off, go ahead and jump off. But if you're able to stay, please stay, and we'll wrap up after this. But yeah, Ethel, what kind of tangible, meaningful change are you looking forward to seeing these administrations and these new leaders bring in? Both of the ladies touched on a lot of important topics, but maybe there are some things that you might want to kind of present in this on this question.
Yeah, definitely. And I just want to give credit to Lene for waking up our people. I think you played a pivotal role in the high participation, listening to those council meetings, the higher transparency that's happening in our government right now, and then also encouraging people to register to vote. I think, people were just they felt like their voice didn't matter, but then they saw you articulating these things and they're like, yeah, I agree. And then they're like, I want to be a part of this, and have some say. Let's reclaim our government essentially for the people, and so I'm thankful to you, and I'm thankful to everyone who stepped forward. And I wanted to share, I have a little bit of data here that I want to share on this point, because I think it's really interesting to see this. When I was running for president, we looked at data a lot, and it's a tough topic because, as Dr. Denetdale was saying, we don't know the demographics of these people that are voting or registered to vote. Are they living on Navajo Nation? Are they women or men? Are they young? Like, we don't know anything about it. And we really need our elections office to start developing and sharing that data so that we can better understand the Navajo voters.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, who's making these decisions about who our leadership is? And how do we inspire young people to participate if they can't see 0% of them are voting, and that's why things are staying the same? There's not much data out there. And actually, when the elections office revised their website, they took down a lot of voter data. That was back in June. The website looks prettier now, but it's less useful than it was before. And so you cannot find the 2010, 14, and 2018 election data on the election office's website anymore. That was all taken down.
Wow.
So, but you can find the 2022 data. Luckily, my team was looking at this. And so we were able to capture it before they took it down. So you can see in terms of the number of votes cast, I mean, this is such a small percentage. What's our population right now? It's 420,000 or something like that. I'll just say 400,000. So if you can see the votes cast, so out of 4,000 people, and obviously not all of those people are registered to vote because they're not all of the eligible voting age. And that's a question a reporter has asked me before, and it's like, I have no idea. I have no idea how many Navajos are of voting age right now. That's another piece of data that we need to know, because we need to know, what percentage of eligible voters are actually registered and actually voting. But 66,229, that's 17% of our population that is actually participating in governance, deciding what our future will be and selecting our leaders. And so let's just take a wild guess and let's say that half of those people, this is not true, our median age is about, it's about 30. So, but we'll just say like maybe half of these people are actually eligible voters, right? So we'll take the number of people who turned out and divide that by half of our population and convert this to percentages. So that's 33%, maybe 33% of our eligible voters are making this decision. I mean, I don't know how that compares to national numbers, but that's a really small percentage to me, and an unacceptably low percentage. But we are getting better. There were more votes cast in the general election. And what's interesting here is this number, 66,229, is not what you find on the election board's website. They're saying that there were 65,416 votes cast, but that doesn't square with the total number of people who voted in the presidential election. As someone who cares about election integrity, I want to know, why are those numbers different? But we won't go down that path at this moment. We'll go back to our election data. So I'm using the number of people who voted for votes cast in this election. I'm using the number of people who allegedly voted in the presidential election. And so, but look at this voter registration number, like, holy cow. Like, I think the 94,000, you see this huge drop in 2018. That was probably because of the purge in votes, right? But now, like, and I credit Lene again, and I also credit the revote recount effort with waking people up and saying, oh, wait a minute, if they're just throwing away votes, then like we need to be really serious about voting, and let's go make sure we turn out, and let's make sure that the voice of the young professional, whatever, vote doesn't get shut down through corruption or human error, as Raymond Max likes to call it, in our election system. So there was a lot of people who registered to vote and also turned out, right? We increased our number by 3,000. It's not good enough, but it's good. We're moving in the right direction. Although you look at the voter participation rate and it's still, I mean, we're lower than we were in 2018, surprisingly. And this may have to do with those issues, like people not getting their absentee ballots. Like maybe the votes cast would have been a lot higher if people actually got their ballots, or if they were allowed to vote because they didn't receive, at the polling station because they didn't receive their ballots. Unfortunately, our laws don't allow that. If you didn't receive your mail-in ballot, you don't get to vote, basically, and it's your fault. I think that's very unfair, and that's a law that needs to change, because it's not the voters' fault that they didn't get their absentee ballot, and so they are unable to surrender it as our laws require to be able to vote on election day. But anyway, so kind of moving in the right direction. But to answer your question, Mayo, and sorry for hijacking your question, but what I want to see is a lot of what Dr. Denetdale and Lene have mentioned. I want to see housing. Housing is number one to me. That is foundational to everything on Navajo Nation government. To have a fully staffed government that's already underfunded, you need housing. That was one of the biggest barriers to me as Attorney General in terms of filling all my staff, was there was no housing. And that was not just a problem for the Department of Justice and the Office of the Prosecutor. That was a problem all across Navajo Nation government. And at any given time, I think we have 25 to 30% of our positions vacant. And most of those positions are like, the professional positions, attorneys, they're psychologists who should be assisting with behavioral health. They're, like really, really important positions in terms of delivering high quality and high need services to our people that could make an impact in transforming our nation and making the lives of our people better. So I think housing is number one. But along with that comes infrastructure, water, electricity, broadband access or internet access, paved roads. So there's that. And then of course, tackling alcohol as a challenge in our community. Our officer count is way under what it should be. We have like 200 some odd officers and we need over 700 just to be able to respond to the call volume that our police departments are receiving. Most of the calls that our officers are actually responding to are public intoxication calls. Mm-hmm. And so, what about the DV case? What about violent crime in our community? What about, really important cases where officers should be focusing their attention? They are not able to do that because of the public intoxication problem and the issue of alcoholism in our community. We need to have all of those services local. And again, you're not going to have this unless you have housing. Like we need detox facilities, we need counseling facilities, rehab facilities. So I'm really hoping, and I know that that's an issue that's very personal to the new president. I'm hoping that he will, utilize the pulpit that he has as president to set the priority for our nation to really focus on tackling that challenge and making sure that we have safer communities and stronger families. I mean, that alcoholism is horrible in terms of damaging the fabric of our families. It leads to other high statistics like suicide, sexual assault in our community, like lots of different things. So if we focus on that key, I think we could go a long ways in the next 4 years. Even though it's just 4 years, you can make a huge difference in 4 years.
Awesome. Dr. Denetdale, maybe you had some final thoughts, and it could be reflecting on any things we talked about today. I did have some other things I wanted to talk about, but we're running out of time. But, is there anything that you might want to just leave us with before we go today?
Yeah, I just wanted to, because I'm on the Navajo Nation Human Rights Commission, and because I've done so much work on border towns and the Navajo Nation's relationship to border towns, the alcohol issue is something that I pay attention to. And right now, the city of Gallup has I don't think it's the city of Gallup, I think it's the community, I have an alcohol task force. And so one of the things that they're proposing, and they're going to bring in, they're having a panel of experts. And of course, there are no Indians on their expert panel. They're always talking about us and act like we're not the subjects of their talks. And they act like we're not in the room, which is what I said to them. So one of their recommendations is going to be to New Mexico legislatures that they increase the tax on alcohol. Well, in McKinley County, guess who is the largest consumer of alcohol? Poverty is profitable. They can't even begin to touch the most crucial issues of our people on the ground. They say that's a Navajo Nation problem. They can't even begin to deal with the issues of the criminalization, the DUIs. They create this vast law enforcement and court system, and so they just re-entrench themselves with this. Navajo Nation doesn't benefit from the existing alcohol excise tax, which McKinley County gets a huge amount from, so I find it very disillusioning. I know that our leaders, and that was what Boo and Dr. Nygren and Miss Montoya campaigned on. I listened to some of the debates, and they brought in border town relationships, you know, and alcohol, and yet they act like we don't exist. Not them, but the towns act like they don't. They're there because of us.
Yep.
They exist because of us, you know, and we don't get anywhere, and we're you know, they said, well, you know, we did invite the Division of Social and Behavioral Science, the Division Navajo Social Services, and so all their experts are coming from somewhere else. And so I just find it's demoralizing, it's delusional, it's delusional on their part, and it's disillusioning that they just continue to do that, you know. And these are some people who, you know, you would say, you know, they have the welfare of their community and their town in mind. Navajo people make up 40% of the population in Gallup. We have no representation on the council. They have an Indigenous Peoples Commission, but they think that people should just volunteer. They don't give it any authority. They don't provide it with any resources, as I know. And that tells you about their indifference. You know, Navajo Nation does have influence. It does have jurisdiction.
Definitely.
And yet we continue not to exert it. So those are my final words. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Denetdale. We need to have a coffee time with Dr. Denetdale, like on a monthly basis or something. So yeah, definitely. So
Okay.
thanks for being on. And Ethel, any final words before we close up here?
Yeah, I think I love what Dr. Denetdale is saying. And I also just want to say, Dr. Denetdale, of course, everybody loves what you have to say. One of our highest viewed videos is when we invited you to talk about Navajo women leadership back in like 2020. It was just off the charts. So there's a lot of interest in the fascinating things you have to say and your perspective. So
yes,
thank you.
I just want to say that. And so we're honored every time that you come on our, you know, this show. It's like, oh gosh, we're so lucky. Yay, she said yes.
Well, you know, Ethel, I'm wanting to pursue and think through about this task force. You know, in Gallup, who's on it? They told me, one of the persons told me she was going to give me documents and data that they've collected, and so I'm going to send an email and say, you said you were going to do this.
Yeah, and I love where you're going, because when it comes to Navajo or Indians selling tobacco to non-Indians, we have to like give that tax back to the state. But what about the other way? What about when our people buy stuff off reservation? Why aren't we getting some of that tax back? Like, let's let this go both ways, you know? And we really, I think that the nation should start advocating for that, entering into these intergovernmental tax agreements that allow for that.
Absolutely.
You know, yeah, absolutely. What's good for the geese is good for the gander, as they say. And one way, like, you know, those alcohol revenues could go a long way in helping us build those facilities and sustain those facilities we need to handle the alcohol problem that is being brought onto our nation from these off-reservation communities and vendors. And there really is a huge inequity in terms of the resources that we have available to address these challenges and the resources that off-reservations have to handle that. And you can see that in the number of prosecutors we have on Navajo Nation. There's this huge disparity. I mean, McKinley County combined with San Juan County have an equivalent population to the Navajo Nation. But McKinley County alone has over 100 prosecutors. Navajo Nation has, you know, barely 100 prosecutors, and we have to serve more than that size of population. And our prosecutors are not only prosecuting crime, they're also doing the child dependency cases. So, you know, we're like at a quarter of the staff that we need to handle the problem. And if we had access to these alcohol tax revenues, that could be a great source of funding to fill those positions and make sure that we have the manpower to handle the problems that come with the alcohol use in our community. And we know that alcohol is coming from these reservation communities. It's not here on Navajo. So anyway, but so I just wanted to mention that, and then I think that's, one other final thing. As executive director of Yeahal Nido, which does business as Navajo and Hopi Family COVID Relief Fund, I do want to make a plug for a couple of things. Well, one is Lene mentioned the number of cases on Navajo Nation. There's that thing that's floating around on social media, like 300 and some odd new cases in 1 week. Well, guess what? The first 2 weeks of November, we had over 700 cases each of those weeks. And then 500 the next week. And we don't know what happened the week of Thanksgiving because the Nez administration never posted data for that time period. If last week was 300 some odd cases, then the week of Thanksgiving, we had over 700 cases again. So, I mean, yeah, the pandemic is still with us. Everybody needs to be careful. And it's not just COVID, it's RSV. My son got RSV and was in the pediatric ICU for 4 days. And the nearest hospital, he took the last bed in Flagstaff, and the nearest bed after that was California, Oklahoma, and Texas. Our entire region is being just hit hard, incredibly hard with RSV cases. So wearing your masks and taking all of the regular precautions is really, really important. And then to your point, Dr. Denetdale, about wanting a coffee shop, we're actually creating community centers. We have one in Sheep Springs that's going to go live in January.
Ooh.
It doesn't have a coffee shop, but it would have space where you could work and have access to high-speed internet through Starlink. And so like way better than any other internet access you can have on Navajo Nation, and probably even in Gallup in terms of, at a business site or a coffee shop. So stay tuned. We will have that coffee shop for you. We're actually launching one in Monument Valley at our flagship community center probably in May, in time for the summer tourism season. So we have intention to address that problem, because with these community centers, it's like, well, we never want to be this vulnerable again, the way we were to the pandemic. And we need to make our community pandemic proof for the long term. And that means rebuilding our local economy, so that outside supply chain disruption has no impact on us. And that means, investing in entrepreneurs, social and small business. That means making sure that our language and our culture isn't all housed in our elders, it's being transmitted to the next generation. And then also that, our people are growing their own food. We have greater food security in our community. And finally, housing, right? So we haven't yet folded in the housing piece, but the community centers are addressing all of those other issue areas. And we are turning to housing in the new year. So I'm very excited about that. But thank you so much for being here with us, Dr. Denetdale. And thank you, Mahaya. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Denetdale. Thank you, Lene, for jumping on. I know that she had to get off and take care of some things. Thank you, Ethel, for joining us today. Great conversation. Want to congratulate all the newly elected delegates and leaders. Also want to congratulate our president-elect, Boo Nygren, and Vice President Rochelle Montoya. As I hope that maybe they could tune into this. Maybe somebody who's part of their transition team might tune into this. But there's so many issues that we need to address, and there's so much hope that we have in terms of looking into these new administrations, and this administration particularly. So we need to bring forth some change, and there's a lot of issues that our Navajo people want to have addressed, and these are just a couple of things, but it's representational of a larger group. So thank you, everybody, and as Ethel had said, just keep masking up, get your vaccine if you're able to, and just let's all keep protecting the community. So, and Hugonet.